humanity had not forgotten the fall. The day the sky burned red with the fleets of the Zalari Dominion, the day Earth's defenses crumbled under plasma fire, the day billions were reduced to ash. They had come without warning, without mercy, and they had left only ruins. The survivors were scattered across the stars, forced into servitude, their spirit crushed beneath the weight of an empire that saw them as nothing more than insects. For nearly a century, humanity had endured chains, but chains could not erase what they were. On the mining colony of Tarsus, 9, a lone figure moved through the tunnels, the dull hum of energy drills masking his steps. His name was Daniel Rains, a former fleet officer turned laborer, one of the many discarded remnants of a once proud species. The Zalari overseers never paid him much attention, just another human hauling ore for their war machine. That was their mistake. In the shadows, a plan was unfolding. Across the Dominion's countless slave worlds, whispers spread like wildfire. They spoke of hidden caches of old human warships, of engineers working in secret, of weapons buried beneath the rubble of fallen cities. The Zalari believed humanity broken, but they had only been waiting. Waiting for the moment to strike. Daniel reached the rendezvous point deep in the mines where a small group of humans huddled together. Among them was Dr. Lien Voss, a scientist who had once worked on Earth's most advanced military projects. She held a battered datapad displaying the layout of the Zalari security grid. Tonight was the night. A stolen plasma charge was carefully placed against the wall of the Overseer's command center. The explosion was deafening, sending shockwaves through the colony. Sirens blared as Zalari guards rushed toward the breach, their reptilian faces twisted in confusion. They had never expected resistance, never believed their human slaves would dare fight back. Daniel moved first, seizing a fallen rifle and opening fire. Blue plasma bolts tore through the air, cutting down the guards before they could react. The others followed, reclaiming weapons from the fallen. The old instincts returned fast. The Dominion had beaten them, but it had not erased the training drilled into every soldier, every pilot, every survivor who had dreamed of this day. They stormed the control center, locking down communications before the Zalari could call for reinforcements. Dr. Voss worked frantically, bypassing security codes to access the Dominion's network. Her hands trembled as she activated the signal. Across the stars, on every world where humanity toiled under alien rule, hidden transmitters came to life. The message was clear. It is time. On dozens of occupied planets, humans struck as one. Factory workers turned assembly lines into assembly weapons. Prisoners overran their guards. Engineers brought ancient warships back online. For the first time in nearly a century, the Zalari Dominion knew fear. But Daniel and his team had one final objective. Docked in orbit above Tarsus, 9 was the ISS Retribution, a relic of the old Earth fleet, its hull battered but its weapons still deadly. If they could take it, they could take back the stars. They moved fast, hijacking a Zalari transport and blasting toward the shipyard. The defenses were light. The Dominion had grown arrogant, believing no human could ever dare such a thing. They were wrong. The boarding action was brutal. Hallways turned into war zones as humans and Zalari clashed in a storm of plasma fire. The ship's control center was the prize, but between them and it stood the Zalari captain, a towering brute encased in gleaming armor. Daniel lunged, firing round after round into the alien's thick hide. The captain snarled, swiping with a massive blade, barely missing as Daniel ducked and rolled. In the chaos, Dr. Voss bypassed the locks, forcing the ship's systems under human control. With a final shot, Daniel dropped the Zalari captain. The ISS Retribution belonged to humanity once more. As the engines roared to life, Daniel looked out at the vastness of space. This was just the beginning. The ISS Retribution drifted in the wreckage of battle, its systems flickering as power slowly returned. The bridge was eerily silent except for the hum of damaged consoles and the occasional spark from overloaded circuits. Across the view screen, the ISS Valiant held position, its gunport still glowing from the shot that had saved them. Daniel leaned forward, his fingers tightening around the armrest. Open a channel. A few seconds later, the comms crackled to life, and a voice came through, strong and steady. "This is Captain Adrian Cole of the ISS Valiant. Welcome back to the fight." Daniel exchanged a glance with Dr. Voss, then replied. "This is Captain Daniel Rains of the ISS Retribution. I think we have a lot to talk about." There was a brief pause, then a chuckle. "I'd say so. Stand by. We're sending a docking bridge. Let's get you patched up." Minutes later, the two ships connected in the void, and Daniel stepped onto the Valiant's deck. The crew waiting for him was a sight he hadn't seen in years, humans in proper fleet uniforms, their eyes sharp, their stances disciplined. They had not forgotten who they were. Captain Cole stood at the head of the group, a tall woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair, her uniform still bearing the insignia of the old Earth Defense Force. She extended a hand, and Daniel clasped it firmly. "How the hell are you still flying an EDF warship?" Cole smirked. "Same way you are. We never gave up." As they walked through the corridors, she explained. The Valiant had been part of a hidden fleet, one of the last desperate moves before the fall. A handful of ships had gone dark, hiding in deep space, waiting for the right moment. They had been gathering survivors, weapons, intelligence. They had been waiting for a sign that humanity was ready to rise again. And the Retribution was that sign. "Your broadcast lit up every resistance cell we have left," Cole said as they stepped into the war room. "You just started a war." Daniel nodded. "Then let's win it." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a vast network of occupied worlds, military outposts, and Dominion supply lines. The Zalari controlled everything. "For now. We don't have the numbers to take them head-on," Voss said, her eyes scanning the data. "But if we hit them where it hurts, we can make them bleed." Cole pointed to a system on the map. "This is Karen Prime. Massive shipyard. It's where the Dominion refits their captured vessels, including ours." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Human ships?" Cole nodded. "They've been tearing them apart, rebuilding them with Zalari tech. If we take that shipyard, we take back our fleet." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Then that's our next target." The war had begun. The ISS Retribution and the ISS Valiant moved through the void like shadows, their engines running at minimal output as they approached the Karen Prime shipyard. The plan was simple: strike hard, strike fast, and take back the stolen human warships before the Zalari could react. On the bridge of the Retribution, Daniel stood with his arms crossed, watching the distant glow of the shipyard. Massive orbital platforms stretched across the blackness, holding dozens of vessels in various stages of refit. Some were barely recognizable, their sleek human designs warped by alien modifications, but they were still theirs. Dr. Voss worked at her console, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the tactical display. "The shipyard's defenses are weaker than expected. Looks like they weren't planning for an attack this deep in their territory." Daniel smirked. "That's their mistake." Cole's voice crackled over the comms. "We have one shot at this. Once we open fire, the Dominion will know we're here." "Then we don't waste time," Daniel said. The plan was already in motion. A small infiltration team had been smuggled onto the station days before, hidden among slave workers. When the signal was given, they would sabotage the station's defenses, cutting power to the automated turrets and delaying reinforcements. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Explosions rippled across the shipyard as hidden charges detonated, sending shockwaves through the structure. The lights flickered, and the station's defensive grid went dark. "Now," Daniel ordered. The Retribution and the Valiant surged forward, weapons blazing. Plasma fire raked across the nearest docking platform, shredding Zalari patrol craft before they could react. "Boarding teams, go!" Shuttles detached from the human ships, streaking toward the captured vessels. The battle was chaos, Zalari soldiers scrambling to respond as human strike teams breached the warships one by one. Daniel clenched his fists as he watched the struggle unfold on the viewscreen. Come on! One of the captured ships, the ISS Aegis, roared to life, its human crew retaking the bridge and powering up its weapons. One down. Another explosion rocked the shipyard as the ISS Vindicator broke free from its docking clamps, its engines flaring to full power. Two down. Then came the warning they had been dreading. Multiple enemy contacts inbound. Daniel turned to Voss. How long until we can get the fleet operational? She shook her head. Not fast enough. The Dominion wasn't going to let them walk away with their stolen ships. But Daniel had never planned on walking away. We hold the line, he said, his voice steady. The Retribution turned, its weapons locking onto the incoming Zalari reinforcements. The real battle was about to begin. The first wave of Zalari reinforcements dropped out of hyperspace in tight formation, their sleek warships angling toward the Karen Prime shipyard. The Dominion had finally woken up to the threat. Now they were coming to crush it. On the bridge of the ISS Retribution, Daniel stood firm, eyes locked on the tactical display. The stolen ships were still coming online, their crews scrambling to override Zalari security systems. They needed more time. Shields to full. Focus fire on the lead warship. The Retribution and the Valiant moved as one, their plasma cannons spitting blue fire into the void. The Zalari flagship took the brunt of the assault, its shields flaring under the onslaught. But the Dominion's response was brutal. A barrage of energy blasts tore through space, slamming into the Retribution's weakened shields. The ship buckled, lights flickering as power relays overloaded. We can't take another hit like that, Voss warned, working furiously at her console. Daniel's jaw tightened. We don't need to. The ISS Aegis and the ISS Vindicator roared to life, their human crews finally seizing full control. Their weapons lit up the void, shredding two smaller Zalari vessels before they could react. Hope surged in Daniel's chest. More ships were breaking free. The ISS Warspite powered up, its main cannons blasting apart a Dominion destroyer. The ISS Resolute joined the fight, launching a spread of torpedoes that found their mark in the hull of another enemy warship. The tide was turning. But then, the second wave arrived. Twice as many ships. Larger, deadlier. The Zalari weren't playing games anymore. Daniel gritted his teeth. All ships, defensive formation. Hold the line. The Dominion forces descended like a hammer, overwhelming the fledgling human fleet. Ship by ship, the Zalari forced them back. Then Cole's voice cut through the comms. We can't win this fight. We need an escape route. Daniel's mind raced. The shipyard. It had been designed to handle massive fleet operations. That meant one thing. A jump gate. Voss was already ahead of him. The main hyperspace gate is still online. But the controls are in the central command tower. Daniel exhaled sharply. Then we take the tower. He turned to the bridge crew. You have the ship. I'm going down there. Cole's voice came back instantly. Like hell you are. You're not going alone. Minutes later, Daniel and Cole led a strike team through the ruined corridors of the shipyard. The battle raged around them, alarms blaring, fires burning as Dominion and human forces clashed. They reached the command tower, blasting their way inside. The control room was crawling with Zalari officers, their scaled hands frantically working to lock down the gate. Not today. Daniel and Cole moved as one, cutting down the defenders in a storm of gunfire. The last Zalari officer lunged at Daniel, claws flashing, but he caught the alien's arm and drove a knife into its throat. Voss, we're in. Get that gate open. Back on the Retribution, Voss worked quickly, overriding Dominion protocols. Come on, come on. The hyperspace gate flared to life. Daniel grinned. All ships, jump now. One by one, the stolen warships vanished into the gate, slipping away before the Dominion could stop them. The Retribution was the last to go, its engines burning bright as it shot into the swirling blue vortex. Then, silence. The battlefield was gone. The stars stretched before them. They had done it. They had stolen a fleet. And the war was only beginning. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace battered but alive. The swirling blue of the jump gate dissipated behind them, leaving only the endless black of deep space. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, one by one, voices crackled over the comms. ISS Aegis, all systems nominal. ISS Vindicator, hull damage but still flying. ISS Warspite, accounted for. The list went on, and with each name, Daniel felt the weight in his chest lessen. They had escaped. They had done the impossible. On the bridge of the ISS Retribution, he turned to Dr. Voss, who was already scanning the star maps. "Where are we?" Voss frowned. "Uncharted space." The jump calculations were rushed. "I had to prioritize distance over accuracy." Daniel exhaled. It didn't matter. They had a fleet now, and fleets moved. Cole's voice came over the comms. "We need a rendezvous point. Somewhere we can repair, refuel, and plan our next move." Daniel nodded. There was only one place that made sense. Erebus Station. A hushed silence fell over the bridge. Everyone knew the name. A secret EDF research outpost, abandoned before the fall. If it still existed, it might hold the resources they needed. "It's a risk," Voss said. "No one knows what's out there." Daniel met her gaze. "We don't have a choice. Set a course." The fleet moved as one, their damaged hulls glowing under the faint light of distant stars. Hours passed. Then, at the edge of known space, Erebus Station came into view. The sight sent a chill through Daniel's spine. The station was intact. And powered. Someone was already there. "Weapons ready," Cole ordered. This could be a trap. Daniel leaned forward. "Open a channel." The response came almost immediately. "Unknown vessels, you are trespassing in restricted space. Identify yourselves or be fired upon." The voice was human. Daniel's heart pounded. "This is Captain Daniel Rains of the ISS Retribution. We are survivors of the fall." A long silence. Then the voice returned. "Dock at Bay 3. Slowly. Any sudden moves, and you're dead." Daniel exchanged glances with Cole and Voss. "Looks like we're about to make some new friends. Or new enemies." The fleet adjusted course, moving cautiously toward the station. Whatever was waiting for them on Erebus, one thing was certain. Humanity's war was far from over. The ISS Retribution moved in first, gliding toward the docking bay of Erebus Station. The human fleet followed, their weapons powered but silent. The station loomed ahead, its dark hull illuminated by faint blue lights. It was old, built in the final years before the fall, but it was still operational. That meant someone had kept it running. Daniel stood on the bridge, his fingers drumming against the console as the docking clamps locked onto the hull. Cole's voice came over the comms. "This could go bad fast." Daniel nodded. "Stay sharp." The docking bay doors hissed open, revealing a group of armed figures waiting on the other side. They wore battle-scarred EDF armor, their weapons trained on the boarding ramp. Daniel stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're not your enemy." One of the soldiers stepped ahead of the rest, removing their helmet. A woman, older than Daniel, her face lined with years of hardship. Her eyes studied him carefully before she spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Daniel met her gaze. "We didn't have a choice. We took back our ships. We took back our people. Now we need a place to fight from." The woman exhaled, glancing toward the fleet outside. "Took back your ships? From the Dominion?" Daniel nodded. A flicker of something passed through her expression. "Hope." Finally, She stepped aside. Then you'd better come inside. The team followed her through the corridors of Erebus, the station's dim lighting casting long shadows on the walls. Signs of battle were everywhere, scorch marks, makeshift barricades, emergency lights still flickering from long-past failures. "How many of you are left?" Voss asked, scanning the station's systems as they walked. "Not enough," the woman admitted. "When the fall happened, we cut off all contact. The Dominion never found us, but the years took their toll. Supplies ran low. People died. Now? Maybe 100 of us. And you've been here all this time?" Cole asked. "Waiting." The word hung in the air. They entered a control room filled with outdated but functional consoles. Screens displayed the surrounding systems, tracking Dominion fleet movements. Daniel studied the data. "You've been monitoring them?" The woman nodded. "We always knew there'd be another fight. Just didn't think we'd live to see it." "Well, you just did," Daniel said. The woman studied him for a long moment, then extended her hand. "Commander Sarah Trent. Last officer of Erebus Station. And if you're serious about fighting back, then we've got work to do." Daniel took her hand. "Then let's get started." The War Council gathered in the central command room of Erebus Station. The flickering displays cast a cold blue glow over the faces of the assembled officers, battle-worn veterans, fresh-faced recruits, and those who had spent years in hiding, waiting for this moment. Daniel stood at the head of the table, his hands resting on the console. Before him, a massive holographic map displayed the Dominion's territory, occupied human worlds, Zalari strongholds, and the vast expanse of space now under alien control. Sarah Trent crossed her arms. "You didn't just steal a few warships. You started something." Cole smirked. "That was the idea." Trent turned to Daniel. "So what's next, Captain?" Daniel took a slow breath. "We go on the offensive." A murmur spread through the room. Some nodded, others looked uncertain. The Dominion was still overwhelming in numbers and firepower. Even with their stolen fleet, the humans were vastly outmatched. Voss stepped forward, tapping the console to highlight a series of weak points in the Dominion's network. "We can't beat them in open battle. Not yet. But if we strike fast, hit their supply lines, disrupt their command structures, we can make them bleed." Trent studied the map. "You're talking guerrilla warfare." "Exactly," Daniel said. "We don't need to hold territory. We just need to make the Dominion realize that humanity isn't broken." Cole leaned in. "We start by freeing our people." The room fell silent. The Dominion still held millions of humans in labor camps, forced to build the warships and infrastructure that kept the Zalari in power. If they could break those chains, they wouldn't just gain soldiers, they'd ignite a revolution. Voss adjusted the map, zooming in on a heavily fortified system. Arden 4. A Zalari prison world. Tens of thousands of human captives, forced to work in the foundries. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then that's where we go next." Trent hesitated. "That place is a death trap. If we go in and fail." "We won't," Daniel said. Because for the first time since the fall, humanity wasn't just running. They were fighting back. And they weren't stopping until the stars were theirs again.